Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Forever Milk podcast. This is the podcast where we review music, primarily rock music, but other stuff too sometimes. This week we'll be talking. Oh, by the way, my name is Tim. This is Tyler.
Hey.
Um, and this week we'll be talking about Paramore's first album, All We Know Is Falling. Um, this is an album very near and dear to both of our hearts. If we can get a little bit corny, I think it's the album we've known together longer than any album, really.
Yeah, I would say that
Um,
it was a very defining record for me personally, as well as with you, where I came across it very early on in kind of my musical journey, as discovering kind of what I liked and what I don't like, and I think it's one that I think I showed to you fairly early on, and it's kind of one of those albums that we kind of grew a lot as friends over just discussing it and listening
yeah,
to it, and you know.
and just experiencing it in a lot of different places because we were all over the place. This
Yeah.
was like this album. I think is like the reason I felt like I related to Paramore so much for such a long time is because they were basically what we were, which is just youth group kids who loved rock music.
Hmm.
And we're all into friendship and stuff like that. That's really what most Paramore music is about, is relationships and friendships. And so it, I really felt like we deeply related to them, like the kids that they were.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I uh, I think there's a lot to be said as well as that there is a very strong youthfulness present in this album as well because of the age that they were. They were all teenagers, fairly young teenagers as well when they were during the writing and recording process of this album, and so I think a lot of those and the songs and the intent behind the songs tended to hit the right chords with both of us, um, in terms of
Yeah,
meaning and uh, even just like tone.
right. And I think the lyrics are definitely they're beyond their age. I think like still they're very very strong lyrics, and I think Haley has been historically one of my favorite lyricists, with regards to this album in particular. And people always want to call Paramore pop punk, but I've always felt like in all of their first three albums where people thought that, but this album specifically, I always felt like they were doing their own thing. Like it was more emotional and mature than any pop punk that was happening at that time,
Oh,
for sure.
and then that's kind of getting into why I think that Paramore has been so, I think, influential uh, over the scene of pop punk music as a whole in the long term. But even with this specific album, I wouldn't necessarily say this album. It's got a lot of pop punk elements. Um, I would argue that it even has some alternative and some emo elements present as well. Um, but for sure,
Yeah.
it's definitely very, very different than really any of the other big groups that were present in the same scene at the time, such as Fall Out Boy or Panic at the Disco.
Right. Right. And to me, I always thought it was just a very their own brand of like straight ahead rock, because it's just drums and guitars and it's strong melodies and it's got the energy and it's like everything that you need in a good rock song. But um yeah, people might call it alternative because partly because I think alternative is such an ill-defined term.
Yeah.
It seems like alternative is just what people call something that you know they don't know what else to call it. It's kind of weird, you know. It's just it's not like exactly straight ahead. It's got a thing, but it's like it's alternative. Like I don't know. Like what do you think?
I mean, it's rather broad, and honestly, I dislike it being a categorization for music, just because so many groups will just get slapped into alternative if they're distinct but not quite influential enough to spawn a new genre title. And
Hmm.
so they'll just kind of get placed into alternative and be, one of those. It's too broad um, to really narrow down an alternative sound as well. So
Yeah.
I, I,
Or
I
to
think,
really like mean much when you call something alternative,
yeah,
at least.
and for there to be like, especially within the rock subgenres, there to be well over a couple hundred subgenres and constantly being more and more added into the mix. Uh, I think alternative is not getting the same treatment for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Um, it is what it is.
Yeah.
You can't get away from it. Um,
Yeah. Okay, let's get into this. The album opens with the title track. Well, technically, it's called "All We Know," and the album is called "All We Know Is Falling." At least according to Apple titles. Uh, Probably, I think most people would agree that this isn't the strongest of the songs on here, and I
yeah,
don't think they really haven't really played it like live since like
even
2006 or something.
even as an opener, I feel like it's rather weak. Um, it's definitely not the
Yeah,
like I wouldn't say that it's the worst Paramore song out there. Um, but I don't think there's anything particularly special about it. There's nothing that really would make it stand out if you put it, side by side all of the other tracks, even on this album. Um,
no, yeah, I think like it was probably thrown together somewhat because it was written in response to an event that happened, I guess, like either during the making of the album or right before the album. Um, During the writing of the album, obviously. But yeah, it just doesn't fit because it's very garagey and chaotic, and so you kind of hear that. I mean, it's not the most creative and compelling riff in the world. Just and so yeah, that's probably why it hasn't been quite as memorable. I think the lyrics are good for a song that is like that, that was kind of thrown together
mhm.
because the emotions are very sincere because it's about something that has affected them very recently at the time. And um, I really like the guitar solo and the backing vocals. And the backing vocals, I think, are like, they're very important to the album as a whole, like the sound of the album. Um, but yeah, I think I would give the song as a whole like a. I've interrupted you like four times. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I think I was just listening. I don't have anything to say.
Okay, you
Yeah,
looked
no.
like you were about to.
Personally, I really honestly don't have much to say about this track. For me, it's like one of the most kind of, it's there, and I'll listen to it if I decide to, if it comes on and I'm just in a mood for Paramore. But most of the time, it's one of those that I'm kind of gonna, I'm never gonna go out of my way to listen to this song. So,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
personally, it sits at maybe a 5 for me. Um,
Yeah,
Pretty middle of the
probably
road.
five
Not a
or
lot.
six. And that's just like, I guess you could say it was for this album, but just like in general, like it's better than I guess a lot of stuff. But yeah, just overall, I'd give it a five or a six. We'll say five and a half for me.
Moving
Um,
on, we have the lead single off the album, "Pressure." This one, for me, it's sort of a weird thing where I think it's definitely got one of the stronger hooks on the album. But then again, it is sort of the most. I feel like it's the most straightforward, kind of generically structured track on the album. You know, there's nothing super creative about it. It all fits in the pocket of what you would get from either kind of your standard pop punk song or even just kind of
mhm.
a pop song to begin with. It is, I think, on the poppier side. Um, and even necessarily lyrically, I think this one is of the weaker tracks as well.
Oh, definitely, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I think
I think
it's all
I.
centered around the hook, and outside of that, it's just kind of it doesn't feel as genuine or as much like there wasn't as much focus put onto making it really grip you. It somehow, I think that the studio probably recognized, or maybe even the members of the band recognized as well, that it does have probably the most earwormy, uh, quality to it, and I think that's probably
Melodies.
why it was picked for the lead single.
Yeah, it definitely is like more like packaged, and it's like as a whole, it's something somebody can easily hand to you because it does have the very typical song structure. It doesn't have a guitar solo or anything. It just repeats the main riff after the second chorus and then goes into like a quieter version of the verse, like a lot of
Hmm.
songs do. I I dig the song melodically. I wouldn't call it, to me, the most meaningful song of the album. Definitely, I do think the lyrics are comparatively um, not as compelling. Um, and but again, the melody and the riff is really really strong, and again very catchy, which you know is it's not a sign of like you know artistic integrity, but it's not a sign of like dishonesty, and it's a sign of like some form of talent in your writing. You know what I mean? If you've
Hmm.
written something catchy, um, and it does have like little hints of the Paramore thing that's really creative and intricate as far as the guitar goes. Like it's little things like the lead part in the chorus and the little higher lead that you hear in the verse, that like when it builds up to the chorus, the pre-chorus, and um, it's like a, even though I guess they probably weren't like super restricted, maybe they were. It's like a little bit of a caged beast. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Maybe just slightly overproduced, but I have a actually quite a bit of appreciation a lot of times for songs that are very simple and straightforward in their structure, because there's a real art to making great songs within that framework.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I think that's
Um,
fair.
I,
Personally, for me, this one just doesn't grip me very much. Where I do
mhm.
see the value in that, and I think that later down the line with some other tracks, they do that a whole lot better. And so I guess in perspective, this one has kind of dropped a lot for me over the years.
Right. Yeah. I think maybe if the lyrics were a little bit better, it would change things a little bit for me. But I think I'm going to put it as like it's it's a strong 6.
I
That's what I'm
agree.
feeling
I
right
think
now.
it's exactly a 6. I think that it is good at what it intends to do as a song. There's nothing that really grips me about it. There's nothing that's going to make me really want to come back to listen to it again. Um, so it is fine, and I do not have any negative feelings towards it, but I don't love it. So I would put it at exactly a 6.
Hmm. Next is Emergency, and you know, like I was saying before, if pressure is like a little bit of a caged beast, this is one that's still structured, but the beast is like it's totally out as far as their
Yeah,
creativity,
for
and
sure.
because it is a pretty straightforward song with a straightforward riff and everything, and it's got like a guitar solo after the second chorus, and then chorus end. So it's a very simple structure, but it's so creative and so like sincerely emotional, um, and like emotionally heavy. And I think it's a great song for teenagers to hear, which was really their demographic when they were first starting. I think it's a brilliant song. As much emotion is in it, and the guitar solo, as we've talked about a lot.
Oh yeah. For me, this song really what boils down to how much I like it is I think that Josh's choice of tone in this track is um, I would venture to say immaculate. And I would say that's the same with the
Oh
next
yeah.
track as well. But I think that the guitar work really really sells the whole thing. The melody is great. The hook is pretty good. and the solo, despite it being, one of the more simple guitar solos that are out there, it's dripping with emotional sincerity and intensity, and it really kind of you get this sense that he's really feeling every single note that he plays. Um,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
and it's an interesting. This is where on the album I feel like the guitar tones really start to get interesting because while a lot of these tracks are in drop tunings,
Oh,
um,
they're all in drop
yeah,
tunings. Yeah, they're all in drop D.
that it still has this really almost like because of the choice of tone that Josh is using on the leads, it still has this sort of bright, kind of shiny feel to everything, um, which I really really appreciate. So, and this track for me has been um, one of the tracks that over time I think I've just grown to appreciate more and more. And I think that the sound of this album is best encompassed in this track as well.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. And as far as the guitar goes, I think it's like the guitar on this album is great almost all the way through, most of the way through. I don't think they were as good on the last couple of tracks, but definitely this is a strong point. And you know, I think they were pretty much using the same guitars for most of the album. Like Josh had his Les Paul Classic, and Jason had his old, really cool vintage Gretsch. Um, and everybody knows that Gretsch and Gibson is a wonderful combo. Um, but yeah, Josh was smart enough to figure out at an early age that you know Marshall is the way to go for rock and roll. I don't think it gets better than that. I'm pretty sure he was only using a JCM 2000 and a uh, a boogie rectifier, and that's it. And I don't know, like I haven't played either of those amps specifically, and I think I wouldn't know enough to distinguish the two, like just by listening. But it definitely sounds very Marshall esque, like through a lot of this album, and I think that's probably what it is. Like he's smart enough to know what sounds good, and it's perfect on here. With that, it's heavy, super heavy, without sounding too um, without losing clarity, and yeah, like the guitar solo again, like as you said, there's something very very special about it that you don't really hear in like a lot of guitar solos. And like I remember uh, a long time ago, like when we were awkwardly, forming a friendship through music like this. Um, it, I asked you like, what do you think is like your favorite guitar solo of all time? And this was like pretty quickly you pointed to this one, and this was before you knew a lot of other music.
Yeah, I was still kind
We
of
didn't know nearly as much.
like growing. I was still really just starting to get into music. Um, and Paramore was one of the first two or three groups that they were probably the first group that I got really, really into. But this track,
Yeah,
is kind of it's not the song that got me into the band, but it's the song that sold me on the band. And it entirely boils down to the solo being like the shining moment and maybe on this album for me. So
yeah. It must be really hard to sing for Haley. She's basically just screaming the entire time,
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
yeah, but again, like the lyrics are very, very strong too, and like it matches the emotion of the riff and the composition and the the solo. But the the funny thing about it is like you can kind of tell like a lot of times what a song like how it started. Like it probably was started and centered around that first main riff, and like I always think of this song when I think like you can write any idea you have has potential. Like if I'm writing something, it's like, and I think it's stupid. It's like, well, yeah, sure, it sounds stupid now with you, playing out of tune and doing terrible strumming and like just you by yourself with an acoustic guitar.
yeah,
Um, it's like it's such a simple thing, but they made a whole song probably just from that idea. And so that's the way I always think of this song. But anyways, I'm gonna give this song like a 8. What do you think? Is
I think I would
that
venture
too low?
to personally, I'm gonna give this song an 8 as well. I think there's a few tracks on this album that I might put a little higher, just because of the way it's personally like my mental state has aged and the way I appreciate certain aspects of songs have changed a little bit. Um, but no, for sure this track gives it a solid 8, and
Hmm.
I don't it's hard to beat. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And moving
Um,
on, we have track 4, Brighter. I think this
yeah.
is where our opinions are going to start to differ a little bit from each other.
Yeah, like I don't know. I just it's like fun to play, as a guitar player. But yeah, that's about it. Like it does have some strong melodies, but not extremely compelling to me. Certainly not compared to most of the rest of the album. And the lyrics are just the vocal melodies are not like as compelling to me either. Like
Yeah.
again, I think Haley is in a register that's probably uncomfortable for her, and like it kind of sort of shows.
Yeah, so what sells this track for me, and it took me a long time to, I've always liked this song. Um and it's always been one of my favorites on the album, but with time, um it's kind of grown to be my favorite track on this album because I think the guitar work here is, and it's also it's another similar situation with Emergency for me. It's all in the guitar tones and the melodies, and I think that there's a sentiment present in this song that um, I think reflects a few situations that I've been in my life before, so it also kind of strikes home a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
you've never mentioned that to me before.
Well, that's a whole conversation for
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
later.
Let's have it right now. You're
Yeah.
right
Well, I
fucking
mean,
now.
it's about, watching a friend leave, but still wishing the best for them. And during college, I had a few, a big falling out with a close friend who is mixed in with some drama inside of our friend group. And everyone kind of just immediately, jumped on his case, but I was like the one person in the group who was like, "You didn't do anything to me. I still am chill with you. We probably won't ever talk to each other again, but I had a lot of fun. I hope that you the best." And so,
Just so you know, I don't hate you.
yeah. And since then, he and I have gotten back in touch, and we're on a lot better terms. But this song, ever since then, has kind of struck me a little differently. Um, but it always,
Yeah.
it for me,
Probably written in response to Jeremy
Jeremy
leaving
leaving the
too.
band.
I
Yeah.
would guess
Um,
they never really talked about the song,
and I don't. They
much.
hardly ever played it as well. It's one of those
Yeah,
that I feel
like
like
even on
is.
that tour, they skipped over it. Well, at Anaheim, this was the only song they didn't play from the album, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Like it feels like one of those that's sort of like a hidden gem to me, where it gets very,
Mhm.
very much overlooked and it's pretty much forgotten by everybody. No one really talks about it. No one really seems to give a
Yeah, they
flip.
don't.
Um, but for me, it's definitely earned a very, very soft spot. There's a level of intimacy. I like the climax after the final bridge into the chorus and into the outro where it just comes to this really like cathartic explosion. Haley
Yeah.
starts belting and everything kicks into 10, and um, after starting in such like a little small kind of intimate sound. So I really love this song. And I've always felt, and this is something I don't know if you share this opinion, you probably don't, but I've always felt like with every Paramore, at least in their first 3 albums, there's been 2 songs that feel very similar to each other in sound.
Oh yeah.
And I've always felt this and Emergency, Brighter and Emergency feel very much like a companion piece to each other, with just like the way they sound, the guitar tones, and
Oh yeah.
sort of the emotion that's present in them. But
I don't think so at all. I think Emergency is much more intense and dark, and Brighter is more like melancholy to me.
mm,
You know, it's not like angsty. I guess you might say. Um,
that's fair.
just like like rain falling down.
Yeah.
Calmly.
Anywho,
Um,
I don't really have much else to say about it. I really love this
yeah,
song. Over time, it's gone from being sort of a, one of the better tracks on this album for me to being my favorite track on the album. So I'm gonna leave it at a 9.
yeah. I think like as you said, like the guitar work and the composition of the guitar parts and everything, and the tone is brilliant. On this one, and I think overall it is a really strong song, just not one of my favorites.
Hmm.
Um, I if I'll listen to it in my car to sing along to the backup vocals and things like that, because that's what I do with this album a lot. Because I mean, obviously you can't sing the lead vocals because they're way up there, but yeah, that's it's not a song I'll listen to like just on its own, other than just
Hmm.
like interesting arrangements and stuff. Um, but so again, it's like it's really strong, but just not one of my favorites. So I'll put it at like a 7, I think,
Okay.
or maybe 6.5, 7. I don't know. Next is Here We Go Again. This one was my shit for a long time. For a long time, and it like still like the syncopation of the main riff with
Oh
like
yeah,
the
absolutely.
rhythm part and the lead part in the beginning, and like just the what would you say, the like the feeling that he plays it with, like the particular uh movement and intonation he plays it with. Maybe that's not the right word. The main riff, I mean, like, and how well it goes with the
Hmm.
that part, and it's just like the rhythm part is just da 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 da. It's just two chords, like it's kind of like caveman style, but it's actually not. It's actually a really smart song and smart arrangement, and so that's one of the biggest things. And the rhythm part keeps going with the really nice lead in the verse, which is the kind of stuff I really like. Like a very
Hmm.
simple rhythm part, like that's kind of low, and then like an arpeggio kind of thing. It sort of is like, but just ringing notes and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Um, and the melodies, the vocal melodies in the verse, I really like. Um, Particularly the one that you hear like going into the second verse. Um, and yeah, like I don't know, hard for me to say enough good about the song. It's just so good, and like the funny thing, like it's like tuned to like a metal tuning. It's tuned to like drop D, or sorry, drop C sharp. So in the chorus, you hear it go like when it changes chords.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess it's the only song that isn't in drop D on the album. It's in drop C
Yeah.
sharp.
I
But yeah, they never did that live for
mm.
I'm assuming for reasons that like it would complicate things. But yeah, that's one of the only things I don't like about it, because I don't think it sounds very good when it goes. Like I don't think
Uh,
that sounds very good.
I think the verses for this track are definitely the strong point. I think there's a really
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the syncopation and sort of the flow of it is really interesting, and the chorus is pretty good too. But it's never quite struck me that way, and I would like this song a lot more, but I've always kind of had a gripe with the outro, um, where it kind of gets to sort of a,
Back, throw it, take it back,
yeah,
throw it, like
it,
over
it
and over
gets
again.
it gets a little bit dissonant with the guitars, and Haley's voice don't seem to like blend super well, and it always has removed me from the song every time I've listened to it. So up until that
Mm-hmm.
point, I really rock with it, but
Yeah.
when it kind of gets into that section, it definitely, it's like, oh, this doesn't fit. It's not blending, I think, the way they may have wanted it to, or maybe it was intentional. I don't know. Personally, I don't really like it. Now there is an old live performance of this track, from super early on, where they transition from that outro into, sort of they use a part of One Arm Scissor by, at the drive-in as the outro, which is a really cool song. And hearing
Yeah.
that song transition into One Arm Scissor, and having that kind of get a little bit more explosive, and it
Yeah,
gets
they
a
did
little
that
more
with a
into,
lot of songs
yeah,
at that part.
for me, if that would have been
Remember they
included.
did the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah, they did Backstreet Boys, yeah. But I
Hmm.
like that live version a lot. I think that it complements that outro a lot more than the preceding like entirety of the song. So for me, this song is sort of a more of a middle of the pack song on this album. I do
Hmm.
like it, but I don't have any super positive feelings for it. So I think
Yeah.
it probably for me it's gonna sit around 6.5.
Hmm. What was the last thing you said? Your audio cut out.
Did it cut out?
Like, what was your rating?
6.5.
Okay. Um, I think I'll put it at a 7. Like, I have a um particular gripe about the way they played it live. Well, I don't like the way they did a lot of things live. I don't like when they tune stuff a half step down from the way it was recorded. You know,
Yeah, that's common
I think,
practice though. It's annoying when anyone does it, but
yeah. So there's that, but also um, the fact that like after the first chorus, when they go back into the main riff, like on the album, you hear them like the rhythm is letting a chord ring out as the main riff is going in before everybody else kicks in, and they quit doing that live for some reason. They stop playing guitar, as the main riff is going, like the lead, and they just let the bass ring out. I was like, what the hell would they do that for? Like, it sounded so cool. Like that sounded so cool. It was just like you're hanging up in the air for a second, with that before the band kicks in, and it's like they took that. I don't understand that at all. But that's actually been like something. It's been an irrational like irritation to mine. Like,
mhm.
God, just play the chord. Like it wouldn't even be hard. I don't know what would have led them to make that decision. But anyways, yeah, I'll put it at a 7, maybe 7.5. But yeah,
Cool.
next is Never Let This Go.
Never Let This Go. Yeah, this song I've always kind of had mixed feelings over this one. And it's another case where I think some of the guitar tones on this track are absolutely gorgeous. Um, but I don't really care for the way Haley's voice kind of fits with them on the verse. I feel like the melody and the verses are really kind of weak, which is surprising because it transitions into what I think is a very, very strong chorus, um, which is a bit more of a belt. You know, she does a little bit more belting on this track. I feel like, at least for what her range was back then. Um,
Yeah,
and it's I don't have a whole lot to say about it. It's really bright. I think compared to a lot of the songs on this album, this track in particular gets very, very bright and kind of warm, almost. Um, so it's good, but I
your
don't
video
think
has been
it's.
frozen for me for like the last minute.
Yeah, yours is
Yeah,
doing that like on and
you've been
off.
doing this for the past minute, but
Cool.
um, yeah, I totally interrupted you. Like
You're okay.
you said, like
I
not a lot you
was
can say.
I was kind of running out of stuff to say about this track. I think it's a decent track. Not a standout. It is okay. I enjoy it from time to time, but it's not one of the ones that I like seek out very often.
Yeah,
So I think for me, it probably sits around a 7.
yeah. I think it is one of the stronger ones. I'll probably put it at an 8. Like, um, and I think the lyrics and the melody are like some of the strongest stuff we hear. Like, um, not like it's not towering above everything
Mm,
else. Certainly not. But um, the lyrics are like they're so like like I can't even like really lean into them if I'm listening because I just like I just get wrecked. Like it wrecks me emotionally, and if I think about it too much. But yeah, they're really really strong. And yeah, not, very like intricate and precise like kind of guitar melodies in this song. Like it's not a particularly easy song to play, particularly like the verse riff. Um, but yeah, they knew how to write like really strong, like a really strong chorus in this one. They definitely nailed it. Um, I think. And yeah, that's about all I can say about that one. I think, and again, I think I'll put it at like probably an 8.
Hmm.
Is that what I said before? I'm pretty sure it is.
You said 7 and then changed to 8, so pretty much.
Okay. Well, 8 is fair, I think.
I guess that
Moving
leads us
on.
into track 7. Whoa! Yeah, I don't have much good to say about this song.
Okay, right off the bat, let's both just since we know like how we feel about this track, let's both give our rating.
Dude,
I'll put it at like a
4.
4.
I
Damn,
really do not like this song.
that's pretty harsh
Yeah, I hate
for
the
what we've
lyrics.
been
I hate
like.
the guitar the guitar melody. I hate Haley's melodies. Everything about this song I do not like, except for maybe Zach.
I
I
didn't
think
realize you
Zach's a good drummer.
actively hated the lyrics.
Oh,
Like I don't think they're
I
that bad.
can't fucking stand the lyrics in this song, man.
Why?
It's just like stupid call and response shit, and
We got everybody.
I've always hated that in music, especially if it takes place of it doesn't feel connected at all to the verses to me. It feels like the verses are, building up to
Yeah.
some
Well,
sort of like
Josh actually wrote that. He wrote the chorus separately from Haley. Like he wanted the audience to sing along and stuff. He thought that would be cool.
yeah,
I think it is kind of.
I feel like there's better ways to implement that though. Maybe write some gang vocal parts in and not just have like you know,
Yeah.
a call and I don't like call and response where it's like I'm going to sing this line telling you to sing this next line, but there's nothing for you to sing. You're just going to say, whoa.
Mhm.
It's sort of like when Blink, to bring Blink into this, when they use an excessive amount of na-na-nas or,
Yeah.
it's a big turn off for me. And like,
There should have been no na na nas after the year 2000 at the latest. I mean
yeah, I
2002.
totally agree. So I don't know. Personally, this song has never done it for me. It feels kind of like a bland, sort of poorly slapped together rock song that's literally only included on the album for the sake of getting audience inclusion when they play it live. So as a result,
Yeah.
it feels
It's not
very out of
clear what it's
place.
about either.
Yeah.
It's not clear because I mean I mean I've never I don't know what it's about. Like I mean I guess it's like about the band and stuff like you know
And I mean,
but like as
Haley
far as like
writes about that a
specifics,
lot, where it's like, "Oh,
yeah.
we're a band. We've got this going on. We're really good." Or like, sometimes it's hard being in a band. She writes about that shit a lot. So I
Hmm.
wouldn't be surprised if that's literally like what the meaning behind the song was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I actively go out of my way to kind of avoid this one,
Yeah.
because I think it detracts from the album
Do you
personally.
hate the all the lyrics or just the chorus?
In it mostly just the chorus, but in you know a whole picture, it creates sort of like a separation for me where the verses are so like disconnected from the chorus. It makes me have a distaste for the way that the verses
Yeah.
are placed. So
Well, they're not particularly compelling on their own.
yeah, no, they're not great.
Either. Like they're not
So
terrible. They're not like really bad, but
yeah, this
uh,
is amongst my least favorite Paramore songs. Also, I'll go ahead and put that
mm,
out there.
I think it's decent enough. I certainly like it more than you do. But yeah, like I'm okay. Like I think the chorus is kind of cool. Like I get why someone or like you wouldn't like it. But I think it works in this. You know,
Hmm.
despite the fact that it doesn't connect with the verses at all. This is actually the one song that I haven't like learned how to play. I mean, I know that it's like it goes A to E to whatever it is, to F sharp, I think it is, but like they play their chords. They play really distinct chords because they're playing all in drop D. So like this is a one that I haven't figured out like exactly what is going on. So that's the one, you know, I figured that out at some point because I managed to figure out all the other songs over the last, you know, year or so. Once you figure out that everything is in drop D and like the kind of chords they use in drop D,
Hmm.
it gets a little bit easier. But um, yeah, definitely not one of the stronger songs on the album. It's like I could put it at a 6, but that would put it like along with Pressure, at this. Or I think did I give Pressure like a 6 or a 7?
I think you
It
gave
shows you
Pressure a
how little these
6.
ratings mean, like
Yeah.
basically. Um, so I would like to move Pressure to a 7. Um, actually, because I actually do really like listening to it, how catchy it is. But you know,
Mhm.
I put this one at like a 6. You know, definitely a
Fair
6.
enough.
Definitely at this particular moment, it is a 6. Um, but yeah, really not a whole hell of a lot more to say about that one. Next we have Conspiracy.
So
This,
correct me if I'm wrong. This was the first song Paramore wrote collectively, like Josh and Haley wrote
yes,
collectively as a unit. So
was Josh or it was Haley and Taylor.
was it
Um,
Haley and Taylor?
yeah, I might not have the details exactly right. Josh might have been there too, um, but I'm pretty sure it was Haley and Taylor writing the song. It's like Jesus Christ, like
Well, Josh is
coming
credited.
out like
Josh is credited on this song.
yeah, but wasn't that like a? Well, I mean, he came in later, I'm sure, like, but I think the main ideas came from Taylor, like, and there might have been like a you know all songs written by
Well,
Josh Farrow and Haley Williams, like except for
yeah,
excluding tracks, whatever. But anyways, like um, yeah, this is I think is a really strong one.
yeah. Oh,
It's
for sure.
like fits in with all the best. It's a very like distinct kind of uh like melody, like in the intro, and then I think it goes from like C to D, but like kind of sort of dissonant chords. Um, but the lyrics are really strong. Like and again, to come out of the gate, like this is the first song you've written together as a band. Like it's incredible. Like, and again, being that young, lyrics are really strong, melody is really strong, and it's such a good song that you don't really notice that it's like doing the same thing the entire song, kind
Hmm.
of. You know, I think. Um, until the bridge comes in, and that's I, it's got the classic Marshall sound to me. Like it's as good as any of the other guitar tones on the album. Um, uh, and really not much else for me to say other than like I've just talked about how great it is.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. I think this is definitely one of the stronger ones on the album, especially one hell of a first track. So I think it does a really good job of encapsulating the tone of the lyrics as well, sort of this kind of eerie confusion that's kind of present throughout, and maybe even a sense of
Yeah, yeah,
distrust. And I really appreciate how well um, that is placed here, and especially because there's nothing else on this album that sort of reflects that. Everything else is sort of, it's a little more, I guess, emotional.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, no, I don't have a whole lot to say about this one. I think it's really strong, very solid track through and through.
yeah. I think it like the overall tone of this album is just feeling like downtrodden. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And um, maybe defeated at some point. That might be a little bit too strong of a word, but like just feeling weak and downtrodden. And I think that song fits in there. Like just feeling like you're under the thumb of like um of just teenage misery. I guess I don't
Angst.
know like what else you would
It's a
say.
very angsty
Yeah, yeah.
album.
I, maybe, but like angst is more like it. Well, it is like
No, I think this
not all of the songs.
album like reeks of teenage angst, but in a good way, not
Yeah,
like in a very like well
it's
put
not in a
together.
generic way,
Yeah,
and corny. Like
it
nobody understands me. I hate my parents. Like
it
it isn't
feels
like that.
very genuine and very real.
Mhm. It's mature.
Yeah.
Like
As
But
mature
yeah,
as you
we
can
can.
get for like 15, 16-year-olds. So
Yeah, I'll give this like a 8 or a 9.
I
You
would give
know.
it an 8 personally. I think it does exactly what it needs to do perfectly. So
hmm Um, I feel like both of us have had a hard time giving anything a 9 or a 10. Like
I gave Brighter a 9, and I'm
you did.
probably I don't think there's anything on this album that I'll give a 10. It's tens are going to be
Mhm.
very hard to come by, but there's some
Tens are
stuff in
very,
here.
yeah, yeah. You can't make them too common, or they obviously lose their value. But next is wait, did I
Franklin.
give? Did I say eight, eight,
Yeah, you
eight?
said
Yeah,
8.
8 or 9, whatever.
And it's
Um,
the 8th track on the album.
yeah, I totally
Um
planned every word of this podcast.
So, yeah,
It's all
Franklin.
scripted. Franklin, yes.
Fucking love this
Um,
song.
yeah, it's like for some reason, like it's about a very particular thing, but I think we've managed to relate to it like throughout the years.
I've
And
always very much been a fan of softer songs that are very intimate, but they still have a sense of um, movement to them that
hope.
you would get out of a rock song. And like, that's not the most common thing to find. But yeah,
hmm
I really, really appreciate this song for what it does. I think that the dual melodies that are happening during the chorus is what really drives the whole thing home for me. I've
Oh
always
yeah.
liked overlapping melodies like that, and I think it's
Well, they
just
figured out that Josh is the fact that he can sing. He wouldn't call himself a good singer,
mm-mm.
but the fact that he can sing, and play a guitar,
And the
they
tone
were
of
smart
his
enough to figure
voice.
out they should really use that.
Yeah, the tone of his voice blends really well with Haley's voice as well. So,
It
and
does,
I,
yeah.
I think that's a big part of it too, which I think that again, he'll say it himself, he's not the best singer ever, but I think that he was very underused vocally over the course of the 3 albums.
Definitely in
Especially,
Brand New Eyes. He hardly did anything
yeah,
in Brand New Eyes.
for sure. I think Playing God might have been the only one that you can really like, and maybe not turn it off, Brick by Boring Brick, where you can kind of like peek him out of the mix a little bit. But
Yeah. Well, that wasn't even him singing those background vocals on the album, on Brick by Boring Brick. Like
yeah,
if you listen to the isolated track, you can find it on YouTube. You hear it's Haley. But back to Franklin. Yeah, he's definitely they were smart enough to figure out that they should use him. Like, and again, because it became kind of a trademark of their sound, I think, like for people who are paying attention. Um, and it's got great guitar tone on the chorus as well, like as usual.
hmm
Um, and lyrically, it's probably one of the strongest on the album, I think.
I would
Um,
venture to say that it is the strongest lyrically on the album. Personally, I think that like it I don't know, it does it communicates what it wants to communicate very, very fluently and eloquently. Um, and
mhm,
I have a hard time finding any flaws in the wording of anything on this track. So
yeah. Um, you know, it's it's weird again, like how the two of us managed to connect to it, like personally and like together.
yeah,
Um, I don't know how like that happened. Like looking back, um, I think it's just a song about like general. I don't know, like why do you think it worked so well for us?
well, for me personally, it's a very um, for me personally, I think the reason I related it to it so much, maybe not necessarily you, um, but it's a song about leaving home and coming back and it not feeling the same, um, and not necessarily wanting to come back or not going back because it wouldn't feel the same. And after moving away from for 6 years and coming back from living in everything felt different, and it never quite, it never quite felt like I was back in the same town. So as a result of
Hmm.
that, um, just the fact that I have lived away from my hometown and then come back and not really liked being
Yeah.
back, I still don't necessarily like being in this town.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think that's just a consequence of the fact that, well, that's getting into personal stuff that I won't get into, but
mhm.
you know, so you relate to it in a very literal sense,
Very much a
and
literal sense.
I always thought that it's like a lot of the album. It is like I said about friendship and stuff, and it's like you know when we were so alive, and you know a lot of what we do every time we get together is like just reminisce,
Yeah.
and things. It seems like people tend to remember good things, unless they're for some reason thinking about memories that are explicitly bad and unpleasant, and um, so we had a lot of times like that. That was the basis of like of the two of us for a while, which was by the way, we've been friends for a long time. We've been friends like 7 or 8 years.
Yep.
Um,
Probably going on 8, I think.
yeah,
It's been 7 for sure.
and we've been close friends for like I don't know, like 6 of those
Five
years.
five or 6 of those years for
Like
sure.
yeah, something like that. And we bonded through music like this. Primarily, the first thing that I really got into that he was playing was what the hell is it called? Paramore's
I think
acoustic performance
I had
CD.
shown you a ton of Paramore stuff, but I think the first time you clicked, like anything really clicked with Paramore, is I distinctly remember showing you the video of Josh and Haley playing "You Ain't Woman Enough to Take My Man,"
Really?
the country song, and you were like, "That's
No,
crazy,"
no, I know the video.
because you were like, that was right in the middle of your big country, like you were super obsessed with Aldine, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna love this shit, and you were like, "Whoa, yeah, how you doing that? You're freaking Paramore," and I was like, you know,
Yeah,
so
I guess I
and
hadn't heard
then
many people cross genres at that point. I don't
and
know. I don't remember that at all.
and then
Like I
from
know the video.
there,
I've watched it a lot since then.
it kind of just like you started listening to them more and more, and then I showed you their acoustic performance, and I think that's when it really, really took off.
Yeah.
But I think
Well, it was
that
really
was
you
the
were just
video that
playing it in the background.
of
You had showed it to me, and you were playing it in the background. Like once when uh your fam was over, and we were all together. We were like playing board games and stuff
oh
like
yeah,
that. But yeah, it was about the times like we felt we both hated high school, and we hated like
still do.
not having any control over our lives and stuff like that, and had big dreams and were unable to accomplish any of them, and like of starting a podcast.
Yeah,
We're living the dream right now, but we we had all those times to like reminisce about and like going on all the trips and uh sitting up listening to music or playing music and singing stuff like this together. um and those were like the first memories we would make for I mean for several years that was all we did.
yeah.
And so that was kind of how I related to it. And so yeah, it's always been a really special song to me,
No,
and they
that's
don't
really
play
cool.
it anymore either,
Well,
naturally.
it would be one that one's so reliant on Josh that it would be kind of hard to play it without having the same
Yeah,
sentiment
but
be present.
what's his face? His taken over Josh's vocal duties. What's his name? Justin York.
Yeah, I've never, it's never clicked. Justin York's never really clicked with me, and there's nothing against him. I think
Yeah,
he's
me
really,
neither.
really, he's
Yeah, I
fun.
mean you can't really copy Josh. But and so for their purposes, he's done a fine job. But yeah, I'll always be partial to Josh. And so I'll put this song at a 9.
This one sits at an 8 for me. It's about in the same spot as Conspiracy, so I really love this song, but for sure.
Fuck you.
Fuck you too, man. Fuck you, bro. Fucking
um,
milk.
That was an
All right.
opportunity to call me a cow.
Um, yeah,
Uh,
moving on to
Final
well,
song is My
closer.
Heart.
My heart. Jesus.
This is like
Oh, I
a
love
song
this
I'm
song.
tempted to give a 10, like honestly.
It's a. I
Um,
tell you right now, it's a 9 for me. 100% a 9.
yeah.
I just
I
don't think
think
I came
lyrically
back
it's
to enough.
one of, if not the strongest. Um, it stands out to me because it's the one that like explicitly is like looking over all the pains and the sadness and the emotion that they're
Mhm.
experiencing, like for whatever number of reasons, and um, being hopeful and singing like a worship song, kind of not like
Yeah.
a worship like the corny generic sense that you think of, um, but genuine like uh, prayer within the context of a really good rock song. And the melody is like really straight ahead and simple. They're not doing anything crazy,
Mhm.
which I think makes it stronger and serve that purpose better. That it's very emotional, but it is very like a million billion songs have done that, where it's like you know E and A and C sharp and B and stuff like that, or whatever like the chords are. It's some of those, and so it really works, and they did it in a very creative, dynamic, and emotional way. So like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the guitar work on this album. It's also, I think, one of Paramore's heaviest tracks for sure. Um, and it's this. There's
Hmm.
just such a sincerity in the emotion. Um, you know, and of course, Josh. It's the only Paramore song that has screaming in it, and for some people that could be a big turnoff. Personally, I think it really complements the intensity of what is happening and the
Oh
emotion
yeah.
that's present on the track. Um, as I've aged and as my views on things have shifted, the lyrics of this song, I've stopped being able to really relate to them in the same way as I used to. A few years back, I might have given this song a 10, but I just I can't um, connect with it the same way I used to. So
Yeah.
that bumps it down a little bit for me personally. But I still
Yeah.
think it's probably the most well composed track on this album for sure. Through and
Hmm.
through. There's no weak sections. Nothing on the song when you're listening through it ever like seems to fall flat in any way. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
what they always made it interesting. Like, you know, the second verse isn't just the same thing. Like, you know, um, in the first verse it's very bare. In the second verse, they build it slowly. There's a clean part where he's playing the main lead riff in the background,
mhm,
and then it goes to uh, like the dynamics get a little bit heavier until it goes into the chorus. So yeah, that's part of what often makes a great song, is progressing it and not, doing the exact same thing um, over and over again. And obviously the background vocals are, and the composition of the vocal melodies, I think, are strong, like strongest in this song, maybe than any other song.
yeah,
Like,
for sure.
um, and I do really dig the screaming at the end. And so again, I think the lyrics are really strong. Like, they're very sincere, and I don't know. I guess I've sort of experienced the same thing that you're talking about, probably to a lesser degree.
Hmm.
But people change, and there's like an arc, and um, my mama's listening. She's gonna hate that if she hears me say that. But like, yeah, I think I guess maybe since I've like done some reading for school and about like you know some of the early psychologists have written about like religious experiences and things like that. I think that's what they were going for.
Hmm.
And seems like it. Definitely if you read the lyrics. Um, but so I guess it can point you in that direction.
Hmm.
But yeah, I could probably go on for a while about this song, but that's really all I can think of to say at the moment. Like just really, really strong melody, really sincere emotion, and like one of the best album closers I think I've ever heard. It's up there at least. Um, wouldn't you say so?
Oh, um, thinking back over other Paramore album closers, I would venture to say that it's their best album closer. Um,
Hmm.
Let me just double check myself before I wreck myself here. If I go back on this in a later review potentially and be like, oh, actually, I'm full of shit. And actually, looking at the it's very much in the running
No
for
man,
the
born
best.
for this.
I don't know. Fuck that. No, I was thinking all we know, or not all we. All I wanted. I
Nothing
was
was
saying.
correct about that statement.
I was saying all I wanted is I would
Yeah,
say just as a offshoot, very much in the running for what I think is their best album closer. But I would
yeah,
almost still say that this one has a stronger sense of finality to it. Um, and
yeah. Well,
and
I think it's like the closer of an album should be like the most emotional and like rockin' like powerful song probably.
it depends on the
Like
tone of
sort
the
of like
album for me. I think an album can also close really well if it's finished out where like album can start out really slow or really high energy and slowly transition, and the last track is a really really soft kind of withering almost sound to it. Depending on the way the album plays out, I think that that could also be
yeah.
appropriate. um
You know what? I don't even know what the closer is to After Laughter. I think it's Tell Me How, isn't
it
it?
is Tell Me How, and I think that's one of their weakest closers.
Oh,
um
I think that song is killer. I think
Really,
it's badass.
that's I
Um,
well, just to spoiler alert, it's my least favorite song on that album.
why? Does it bore you?
I
Is
think
it too
it's
sparse?
very maybe want to cut this part out this review just because this is kind of off topic, but I think that it very much is kind of in trend with a lot of modern pop ballads with the way that the piano part is written and sort of the melody is laid across the track, and it's just very boring to me. Not a lot of
Hmm.
like intrigue there. I feel like I've already heard that sound present elsewhere um, from other people. And most people would say that on that album that No Friend is the worst track, but I have
They
some
wouldn't be stupid for saying that.
I have a lot of interesting opinions about that track. I think that there's a lot
Yeah,
of merit behind it, but it definitely isn't the best. But no, I don't like Tell Me How. But
yeah,
I think my heart
um,
is as I would give it their best album closer. I would say that it's Paramore's best album closer.
yeah, um, yeah. Not much more to say about this. I
Yeah,
think, yeah, I gave it a 9. Just really, really strong song, really strong melodies and arrangements and vocal harmonies,
yeah,
and you know, particularly again, like I'm saying, the very end of the song is like a great way to end the album. Like they've gotten to the climax and um, just letting the chord ring out and the screaming keep going for a little bit, and um, it's hard to do better than that because I always think it's like weird and like abrupt and awkward when like a song just like ends, like choking cymbals and muting guitars and like it's just silent after like going hard. I think that's kind of it works, but it has always felt a little awkward and goofy to me. You know
depends
what
on
I
the
mean?
depends on the song for me. Generally I prefer a solid cutoff than a fade out, but it depends on the situation. Um, so
Yeah. Well, I reckon that's about it. I
yeah.
reckon that's about it.
So
There,
in recap, what would you give this album overall?
Oh boy, I've historically said it was like one of my all-time favorites. Um, I haven't been listening to it too much
Yeah,
lately, in
but
particular, so it's hard for me to
I
say.
don't know about you, but I've been listening it.
Like, Like how much?
Not that much. No, I was making. Yeah, no, I don't listen to this album very often anymore. Um,
Mm. I go through like Paramore phases, definitely, but and I had one like sort of last year. But that lasted quite a while, but not as of late in the last couple of months. But so it's hard for me to say right now that it's like one of my all time favorites because that'll change for me a lot. But what do I give the album? I'll give it, I guess, based on just the quality. I'll give it an 8 or a 9, maybe a 9 in my personal opinion.
I,
Probably a 9.
I would say just for sentimentality and just for a lot of the guitar work and some of the melody present on this album, it sits at a solid 8 for me.
Mhm. Well, there you have it.
Few years ago, might have given it a 10, but I feel like I've matured a
Hmm.
lot in my tastes, and
Yeah.
it doesn't quite ring the same as it used to. But I still very much appreciate it, and like I said, I think it sits at a very solid 8 for me.
Yep.
Yep,
Fair enough.
yep, yep.
I reckon that's about it, Clem.
Although there was
Um,
good milk.
that was good milk
Hope you
right
guys
there.
enjoyed your daily glass of milk,
Yes,
and
your daily hour-long glass of milk, whatever it's been.
been chugging. Hope you've been chugging.
Yeah, yeah. England has tea time. We have milk time.
It is milk time. Forever
It
milk
is.
time.
It's milk time. Um, and so yeah, we don't know what album we're gonna do next.
But
Um,
we'll probably talk
if you
about
have
it.
any requests, we might pay attention to them. Um, so, but yeah, we will see you next time on the Forever Milk podcast.
Forever milk.
Will we ever explain the title? No,
Probably not.
never. We can't.
Never. The secrets shall die with us.
Yes, I'll take it to my grave, Forever Milk.
Yeah, I'll take it to your
Um,
grave too.
but if you're gonna show up, like you can leave a glass of milk on my grave.
That's how. That's how. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thanks for
Tally
listening.
ho, folks. That's not a word for goodbye, is it?
It works.
Tally ho.
Tally ho.